You're born ready. I feel like we started with that before. We've had this.
Maybe.
Born ready? Well,
Hey,
I didn't catch your voice.
There's only so many cool and funny quips we can start the show with.
That's not true.
We
Don't
got to
challenge
recycle
me.
eventually.
No, there's no recycling here. We're conservatives. Come on, you just throw everything in the trash. It goes in the landfill. I'm kidding.
Hey,
We're fighting that now, too. Josh Hawley and the nuclear waste here in Missouri. Anyway. Is that really how we're going to start?
I guess so.
Oh,
yeah.
cool. Well,
welcome.
Anyway.
It's Thursday. It's noon. It's
Thursday. It's noon. It's caucus time. You took my line. It's caucus time.
okay.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I'm not used to being the second fiddle. Oh, boy. But what a
we better
week
get used to
it
it.
is. All right, fine. Fine, Mr. Task Driver. It is, in fact, caucus time. And this is a wild week. We have had too many wild weeks in a row. I need a night of sleep. Mm-hmm. Actually, I have been sleeping better since the RNC's over because that was a lot of late night watching.
Yep.
Oh, boy. But it is another Thursday, and we're going to total transparency moment. Today's actually not Thursday. This is a pre-recorded discussion. However, due to the supposed presidential address that's going to happen tonight, this is Wednesday, we'll probably see how that goes. If something happens tonight, you'll see me break in and we'll start the episode live tomorrow and then move to this discussion. But just so everyone knows, if we talk about a bunch of stuff, but not that in the midst of this discussion, it's because this had to be pre-recorded due to travel schedules. But we wanted to keep on with our Thursdays at noon. I know that everyone appreciates that consistency. So that's where we are. But oh my goodness, a lot has happened. Mm-hmm. A lot has happened. And who knew that last week we talked about the attempted assassination of a former president, the next president of the United States. This week, we have even more to talk about. It was just about as revolutionary as all of that.
Well, we were trying to figure out last week if Biden was going to drop out. And I said, I don't think so. And you said he would.
I said he'd be gone.
Now I have to eat my shoe.
That's true. That's true. Nate ate crow. Intern Nate had to eat crow. You can eat your shoe. I'll forgive everyone. We don't have to because I didn't know. And it was not like the Biden dropping out part was not my original idea. Mm-hmm. Lots of people were saying that. I agreed, though, that it was coming, and I agreed it was coming quickly. And then Thursday evening, actually, I saw the night before Trump went on to speak, Newsmax and Town Hall both in the late afternoon started reporting there is a letter. It's already written. It's going to be released this weekend while he is in Delaware recovering from COVID or whatever they supposedly say happened. That sure enough happened. Mm-hmm. Sunday they released a letter. Joe Biden announced he was stepping back. He was getting out of the 2024 race and not going to accept the nomination, was resigning from the race itself. And then a few minutes later he endorsed Kamala Harris as the next nominee. He didn't nominate her, obviously. He endorsed her for the nomination. But that all happened. And I mean, through Sunday morning, major Biden advisors and people were saying, no way, he's in the race to win it. He's not getting out. And then hours later, he got out by tweeting a very strange statement with a signature that no one had ever seen before, that line under Biden with a different J. And also it wasn't on White House letterhead. It just said Joseph R. Biden up top.
Yep.
It was
weird.
It was very bizarre.
This is the most bizarre time I can remember.
Which that immediately led to an incredible amount of hey, proof of life.
Yeah.
Joe, people responding to that. Joe, send a picture with today's newspaper, please. But it really did spark, and I don't think it was unfounded at all. It was so odd how it all happened. Mm-hmm. That sparked some very interesting discussion around where and how Joe Biden actually was. In fact, I held, and we're under that until later tonight, that within 48 hours it would be announced that I was on a streak, so I decided to continue. Within 48 hours it would be announced that the president had succumbed to something related to COVID or something like that, which I think that there's still greater health concerns than COVID. I'm at this point, I have no doubt.
But your prediction is that he had either already or was on the brink of passing away.
Yes.
So you, caucus viewer, will know if he was correct or not.
Yeah, because that deadline was Wednesday night. So we'll see. There's supposed to be a presidential address at 7 o'clock tonight. We'll all be watching that. The video of him getting out of the motorcade and going up into Air Force One, and then the same thing, exiting Air Force One in D.C., it was weird. Like, it was a weird video. But to me, it wasn't like, I know a lot of people, body double, mask. I was like, he's not as shuffly as normal. He looked a little bit more vim and vigor. But we've seen this. Like, debate night was he tanked. 2 nights later, he was ramped up and good. It really does look like medication-induced something to me. Down nights and up nights. That's what I saw. I saw more of a mobility thing, which honestly, you want to get deep into conspiracy land. I hear a lot of people talking about Parkinson's. That is a balance between neurological symptoms of mobility and the cognitive stuff. That's a very interesting thing. I don't know. I have absolutely no idea, but there's a lot of interesting speculation that does some of those pieces kind of plug into the public stuff we see that just makes no sense. It's not consistent. So I don't know. I don't know. I think that he's more ill than anyone has officially said. I believe that part is true. I don't know what it is. And I wouldn't be surprised if he just suddenly passed away. I mean, he just suddenly resigned from the race when we were told hours before he wouldn't. So what else could they lie about?
Right.
I mean, who knows?
Who knows?
Now, here's the next layer. Kamala. The DNC is obviously on August 19th. The majority of delegates needed, more than that, have pledged support to her. Now, they're not legally bound. We had intern Nate actually did a really good document on this, and I left it closed. I didn't open it up. But there's a lot of different things at play here. They've said that they'll vote for her, but I think that we're still, that's a pinky promise. That's not legally tied to the primary votes of the states, which now have, by the way, every single one of them been disenfranchised and defrauded because they voted for Joe Biden and he just got out of the race and endorsed someone else after the primary process is done, but before the nomination. Election interference and fraud. Hello.
Right.
I'm offended.
The party saving democracy is like, oh, what if we just like switch out our candidate without any of the voters deciding? Which
that party cares nothing about democracy.
Yeah, it is insanity. And what I have seen over the last couple days about Kamala is just the most bizarre, astroturfed, like. She's not a serious candidate. I mean, she was polling in like 6th place during the 2020 Democratic primaries. 6th place behind Andrew Yang. Lowest approval rating ever for a vice president. And we've had some bad vice presidents. We've had, what was it, Nixon's vice president resigned?
Yes.
For corruption?
Yeah.
And she has a lower approval rating than him,
Which, if you look back, I mean, you're going to talk about consequential stuff. This is 1968 is playing out over again in the sense of all the things that are happening. An incumbent president not running. We've got surge on the other side of the party. We've got the Democrat National Convention happening in Chicago again. That was 1968. There's a lot of interesting parallels. But one of them, pardon me, in a little bit of a different way, is after 1968, that is when we saw the entrance of, after 1972, that series, at the beginning of the Nixon administrations, that's when you see a president resigning. Gerald Ford coming in, he was chosen because Spiro Agnew, right? That was Spiro Agnew resigned. Gerald Ford was chosen, came in, vice president, then ascended to the presidency when Nixon resigned. All of a sudden, the dude sitting in the Oval Office had never been elected by a national election of the people of the United States.
Yep.
We are looking at another situation where that's quite possible. I mean, the nominee has resigned.
Right.
But what happens if he dies and Kamala ascends to the Oval Office and then she selects someone and now we've got a vice president in office who was never voted upon by the people? Well, what if she goes down in flames, which could happen at any moment?
Right.
Now you're at 1970, 1976 all over again, 1975, 76. This is crazy stuff. Except I trust all these people way less than those people in the 1970s.
Right. I'm not going to be making any predictions because nothing is predictable anymore. This is just, every day everything is different. The entire vibe is different. You go on Twitter and the entire vibe is just shifting every single day. Everybody's like, we're so back. Trump is unstoppable at this point. And then the next day it's like, oh my goodness, why do Kamala has this in the bag? And then we're just going back and forth in between those things over and over again. Meanwhile, every single piece of evidence about the assassination continuously makes the situation weirder and weirder and makes the theory of incompetence harder and harder to believe. And everything is just so blatant, and the lies are so blatant. Axios had that article earlier today about like, where did Republicans get this idea that that Kamala was appointed as Biden's border czar? And a bunch of people pointed out that the author of that Axios article described Kamala in that way in a previous article. So it's like, it's gotten so blatant at this point that it's like, okay.
Now, Axios put the little thing on there, we, along with many other places, mistakenly referred to her as a border czar. They've actually put that qualification up there. It's wild.
Yeah,
at least I think I saw that.
It's insanity that. I mean, this is what postmodernism looks like. This where all narratives are just constantly crumbling and like being replaced with new ones, and there's no coherence to anything, and everything's just in flux, which lends. I mean, and it feels like it's accelerating, which lends credence in my mind to what Haywood said on our show, that this might be the last presidential election we see.
Yeah. The entire system around us is changing, and that's why it necessitates a different conversation. We're in a different place than we were 20, 30, 40 years ago, when we had a lot of these discussions, when the conservative forces rose up and we saw the big push inside the Republican Party that shifted the Republican Party conservative. We're in a different place now than we were then. So I'm not necessarily throwing down any answers. I'm just making the observation that as a result, the game has changed, and I don't mean to reduce our national situation to the level of a game, but I mean, you know what I mean. The game has changed. The situation has changed. The players have changed. The dynamics have changed. So our response in each of these situations must necessarily be different than it was, and that doesn't mean that we get rid of our values and convictions. I mean, that was a great conversation with Haywood for that reason. No, we're not ditching any kind of convictions or values, but we are talking about political systems and where we are in history. And there is no philosophical, scientific, historical, theological, any kind of guarantee that the United States of America exists as it has in all of our lifetimes. That could be subject to change. We are a very young country in the history of, in the word that I can't think of, but something to picture of human history. Like, this is a very small slice. I'll hit the thesaurus later and find my word. But I mean, even if you look at that in terms of a view of Christianity and the impact, that's only 2,000 years. Or that is only 2,000 years of world history, but we're only 200 years of that 2,000 even. Like, this is a very recent new thing that's subject to change. I think it's foolhardy for us to assume that as that is so small, the picture of the last 30 or 40 years, what conservatism the Republican Party means, we shouldn't be willing to adapt and change and figure out how to move. It's just, this is the conversation that is upon us. And I think that conservatives right now, Republicans, are getting into a lot of micro arguments about specific things. And this is welcome to the platform discussion, which we didn't really get into last week. But I think that it would behoove us all to have a broader view of some of these things, just in our understanding of how we're interacting and where we're moving and what it means. Because there's a lot more to it than just, but this is how it always has been. Well, for the last 30 years, for the last 40 years, this is how it has been. But then you start going back, well, how has it been? You go back to the beginning of America, the beginning of Western civilization, the beginning of Christianity. I mean, it's it progressively, our little slice of the pie gets a lot smaller when you continue backing it up and looking inside the context of what has come before. So that's why I appreciate Haywood and a lot of other voices so much, because they're starting to bring all of that into bear, not just American political history, which is short. So it's context is extremely important, and if you're going to be right and apply your values and your convictions correctly to govern and move humanity forward, then you need to understand the historical context, and that's a lot more than just a couple of decades.
Yeah, I agree completely.
Sorry, I had a soapbox moment there.
No, that's why I read Spangler all the time, because we have to look at these things on like multi-thousand-year scales.
Well, and we are so short-sighted in America now, and that's just a cultural commentary on our attention spans and the kinds of media that we consume and how we consume it and where and when. We really have lost that attention span, which is why I just go read a book, stop listening to stuff, stop watching stuff. I hate to say that because you're listening or watching, watching us.
Keep listening to us, keep watching us.
The end of this.
Don't listen to him.
Employ my advice when we're done, okay? This is only a few more minutes, you'll be fine. But that is that is so very important, because not only just the attention span of reading a book, but the understanding that comes with more than just the last 30, 40, 250, 1,500, 2,000 years of history. There's a lot to understand and look at, and there's a lot we can learn from that. And I feel like we're so very short-sighted because we are looking at how the game is or has been recently, but that doesn't mean that it's not just going to completely change. And if we're not there to change with it, we will be left behind. And I personally want to see people with the right values continue in leadership and governance of the United States of America. So there has to be at least a set of questions that we ask ourselves over this, and that's definitely an intriguing proposition to put up. So, okay, in light of that,
Yes.
I'm trying to think, what the heck all happened in the last week that we need to cover? Biden dropped out. Kamala's the nominee. Do you think, okay.
Kamala's the presumptive nominee. I mean,
Kamala is the alleged presumptive
Yeah.
nominee. I'm going to add another couch to that one. I'm done making predictions. I'm still in the middle of one that we're going to find out tonight.
Yeah.
But I still, even if I extend it by 2 days, I'm going to call it half right. We'll see. If Biden suddenly passes away next week, I'm going to claim that one. Anyway, it's partly claim. But so the DNC's coming up in August. We'll have a chance to talk about that. But so let's talk briefly, because we have one overarching thing we want to get to, and I'm going to be totally honest. I haven't even named this episode yet. We're gonna name it after a lot of the content's been made. Boom, mind blown. But GOP convention, RNC platform, big fight, super streamlined. Literally, and actually, Ed Martin said it best. Which, if you didn't watch it, I will post that. Ed had a great 30-minute segment on C-SPAN. And he talked about it. And I know there's a lot of people who are very pro the new platform and anti the new platform, or I should say disappointed. Not anti the new platform. Most of them are fine with a lot of what's in it. Disappointed at what was taken out. He did a very good job reminding everyone, just some context of it. It wasn't just certain sections that got slashed. The entire thing across the board took a hit in terms of the number of words.
Right.
And it was brought down into a very consumable thing that could be narrowed up in 20 promises or 20 points brought together. From a campaign perspective, it really is a pretty solid move on that front, the streamlining of it.
Right. Well,
however,
it's like a seventh of the way long or something.
Right.
Like that. Yeah.
The question is, though, it's not just should they or should they not have removed some of the pro-family, pro-life stuff. Is this even what a party platform is supposed to be? You and I have had this discussion a few times, I think, but we've not had it on caucus. So let's just cover that for a few minutes. First of all, what they did was the pro-life and the pro-family platforms got reduced in size greatly. And a lot of the very specific language over protection of life for the unborn and this and that and the other, it's gone. Stuff that Phyllis Schlafly worked on in the 1980s and 90s, a lot of it's gone. And it was stripped down to a very small quote, a section, which I can pull up here. In fact, I will real quick. But this reminds us the difference between political campaign platforms that come around every 2 or 4 years, or 6 for senators, and party platforms. Should these be the same thing or not? Were they right to remove these things or not? We're not totally in alignment on this, but we both see a lot of sides of the field, and I think that that's helpful. So what's your take on that, just off the top?
Right.
The whole thing.
I think there are good points on both sides of the issue. Overall, I mean, I think that there is a small subset of people that are going to look at the platform and for that reason be convinced or dissuaded from voting for Trump. I don't think that that's going to be a very common occurrence unless, some people get a media frenzy about the pro-life thing, and then some people I follow on Twitter are like, wow, well, let's look at the American Solidarity Party because they changed their platform. Like, I don't think that's the way most people look at politics. However, the way that we do platforms, the way that both parties do platforms, changing the platform every single presidential election year, meeting to work on it then, that kind of implies that it's supposed to be tied into the presidential campaign, because you're going to have a nominee at that point. You're going to have a nominee that's running actively. Well, not a nominee, but at least like somebody that's been elected in the primary. Even if the nomination comes like a day later, it doesn't really make a difference in that way. But because some people make the point that, okay, this should be like a set standard of our values, and that's why some people get upset that we change it. But then why do we change it at all every 4 years? I think that it makes sense to change it every 4 years because it has to be both specific to the time we're in and the challenges we face, as well as specific to the candidate. And I mean, and it should reflect the values of the party, but for the last almost a decade, the values of the party are Trumpism. He's taken over the party. It is Trump's party. And so it is Trump's platform. At least that's my opinion.
Now, and see, I would actually, one of the ways that you said something I really appreciate in there, and I hadn't thought of it that way, I agree with it, and the other part of it I actually don't agree with. So this is where it gets interesting and where we really do get into some different splits. First of all, I think, in general, I would say the party platform ought to be far above in values statements the campaign platform of each candidate who's running. Like this is your platform, this is your set of promises, what you want to tackle, why you want to do it, and what you're going to do when you're in office. This is a statement of who we are as a political party. It's a lot more broad and overarching than just the specific things for you and your office and what you're running for. I would like to see it transcend that. I think that it should. However, you make a good point. It's changed every 4 years. It happens in the cycle of electing, our nominee for president. There's a reason for that. It's supposed to change and adapt with what we are facing as a nation, what our platform is. You can't just, continue it would be ridiculous even though obviously we oppose slavery, the Republican Party was founded upon slavery, to have the same language from the 1860s of the original Republican Party
the
platform.
Republican Party was founded on the opposition to slavery.
I'm sorry, on the opposition. It's centered around the issue of slavery is what I mean. But as the abolitionist party, didn't I say the word abolition?
Nope.
Okay, I hadn't said it. I said it in my brain.
We were founded on slavery.
We were founded on the issue of slavery, the abolition of slavery. Abe Lincoln wrote the first party platform, if I'm not mistaken, very heavily involved in it. That language, even though the principle still exists, would be, should we say, not ineffective, but unnecessary today, because we don't have southern states and different economies using.
It would be extremely antiquated.
It doesn't necessarily apply. Obviously, the platform needs to move and update. That's actually a good point, though, about it comes every 4 years in the cycle of politics. I mean, welcome to kind of how it flows. I like that. I actually agree with that, and that is a good course for why it should change. Sometimes maybe drastically. Every once in a while, it's time for it to be really radically changed. And in today's age, to the point of, attention spans, those attention spans go across everything. And if people are not going to read however many thousands of words the document was, maybe something like this would actually get people's attention, because I don't know who actually opens up the platform.
Right.
But they might if they see the list of 20 promises to begin with. It's very interesting. I would say, though, my one disagreement is I don't think that it should be, I don't think that the party platform should be a statement of any individual candidate's values. I think that it should be the statement of values by which we hold candidates accountable. Because we have a whole lot of people behaving not anything like Republican Party values that call themselves Republicans. If there's a way, now that is not for the national party necessarily to beat people into line with. I personally like to see the bottom-up approach. Your township committee people, the central committees of the counties, the state party. We have to have those invaded from the bottom up with good movement conservatives, grassroots values, people who understand the values. Because we have a lot of folks, and this is where the rhino term comes from, Republican in name only. Well, you call yourself a Republican, you don't behave anything like a Republican. Well, how do you have that? You have a standard. Here, we all, the party, the grassroots from across America, have debated and decided in committee and voted on what the standard is to be a Republican. You don't match this. Get in line or you're out. We won't let you be a Republican anymore. We will expel you from the party or ostracize you, fill in the blank, whatever it is, because there's different processes. I think there's a great argument to be made where that is where the party platform should be separate from and above candidates, in the sense that how else are we going to hold people accountable? It shouldn't just reflect the values of whoever's in charge, because we as a party are more than just the one person every 4 years. That changes a lot. That changes frequently. And also the needs of the nation change frequently. But then, there's kind of a difference. Well, if you're going to define those values, they have to be updated. It does get into an interesting discussion. I still sit firmly in the middle on this. I completely see why the platform was changed to the way that it is. I also see why I'd really rather it not just kind of be at the whims of every 4 years the candidate in charge.
I mean, maybe the solution then is not have it be an every 4 years thing. Maybe have it be an every 10 years thing, so then it's kind of offset from the election cycles.
Yeah, that's actually an interesting proposition, because again, I think that I see both sides. It does need to be updated. It does need to reflect the values of the current party and what they're trying to accomplish, especially at the national level. But also, it needs to be a little bit separate, a separation of powers from that platform to the main person running, because if we're going to use it as a standard to hold candidates accountable, that can't be every candidate but one. It doesn't work that way. There has to be some separation. So there's an interesting discussion to be had there. But
yeah.
I mean, it was whatever it was passed. It is what it is. The vast majority of it is great. And frankly, what a lot of people got in a kerfuffle over, which, I agree with the kerfuffliness of it, the families and life got pushed down to one section. And it says, Republicans will protect and defend a vote of the people from within the states on the issue of life. We proudly stand for families and life. We believe that the 14th Amendment to the Constitution of the United States guarantees that no person can be denied life or liberty without due process, and that the states are therefore free to pass laws protecting those rights. After 51 years, because of us, the power has been given to the states and to a vote of the people. We will oppose late-term abortion, the only mention of the word abortion, while supporting mothers and policies that advance prenatal care, access to birth control, and IVF or fertility treatments. So I know a lot of people, and the IVF discussion is one that's really just kicking off. That's not, that is a whole ball of wax in and of itself to discuss from a historical, where we are, a practical, and then a moral level. That's a discussion to be had. But I know a lot of people who didn't like that. I know a lot of people who don't like the fact that it only says specifically that we oppose late-term abortion instead of anything. I also find it interesting that the 14th Amendment was invoked in this because that's the personhood amendment argument, which has been kind of the farthest extent of the abolitionist-style pro-life people, is we must use the 14th Amendment to establish personhood for the unborn child, and then period, all the way, it is a person. Like that's been one of the even earlier than like the heartbeat bill kind of arguments. So that got a nod in here, in my opinion, which is a pretty darn pro-life thing. So it's still, I look at this and I go, I don't think pro-life was being attacked. I think pro-life was really just being streamlined along with everything else. Some of it may be unfortunately streamlined, but also some of it is, it's kind of interesting, the possibilities that are open, you know. But this also brings us back into the whole ball of wax discussion about should it be national level legislation or not, you know. There's a lot of things to go into, but go read the platform. It's up. You can find it. The presidency, American Presidency Project has it up. It's all over the GOP website. It's an interesting document, and it is very readable now because it's short enough. You can get to it pretty well. Go take a look. So yeah. Well, shall we get into the meat of our discussion?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I say the meat of our discussion. We've already gone for 25 minutes. Here's what we're going to do, though. First of all, I want to make sure.
Ryan before we started, let's do a shorter one.
You know what? It still can be a shorter one.
We don't get to the main topic.
We haven't even gone halfway through a normal time episode. Yeah, this may be a shorter one, folks, just because there's a lot to get to this week and a lot that we needed to cover. But let me remind you of our sponsor, T-Rex Inc. Great, folks. You want to be a part. In fact, I've got my brand new T-Rex Inc. mug right here. This is the shirt. We inspired this shirt, apparently, with an earlier episode. I need to go back and figure out which one that was. I don't even remember. And we have T-shirts.
Yeah.
Join the Revolution. I've got a mug now. Join the Revolution. It's got that beautiful George Washington emblazoned on the front there. You too can take part. And there was even a change. The code has changed, folks. It is Caucus 30 now, not Caucus 15. And if you use that code, you go over to trexinc.com, find yourself some shirts, mugs. There are hoodies, and actually I hear plans for a lot more coming. I hope I'm not putting pressure on them by saying that. But there's lots of plans over there, and there's some absolutely awesome designs. Whether you're looking for faith and family kind of stuff, you're looking for the historical itch to get scratched with this George Washington style thing, or you're looking for some cool Trump gear, right there you see on the screen are one of my current favorites, Secret Service Training Department, Cow on a Roof. It's fantastic. There is memery abounding here too, in addition to faith, family, and freedom. You will find it. trexinc.com. Use Caucus30, and you're going to get a big discount. The biggest discount, Bigly. The biggest discount, believe me.
The biggest of discounts.
The biggest of discounts. And we were told because our people are so cool, that's why that discount actually changed, because they like you all quite a bit. So we got an upgrade on our discount, and there you go. Caucus 30, show them some love. Thank them for supporting Unauthorized Caucus and for being our current and only sponsor. They have the full show here. So let them know that you appreciate them being around. trexinc.com. You're going to find great stuff. Faith, family, freedom, Trump. Lots of good gear. So I got a few. I was wearing my Trump Legend shirt from them this past weekend, and I was getting a lot of the like. It's you know, we used to wear Trump gear in public even through like 2020, and you get some weird looks from people. But now I wear it, and you kind of get the. I can't be too excited, but I kind of like it. I'm like, I'm seeing this look, and give me a thumbs up. Just give me the thumbs up. You know you like it. So I had my big Trump fist in the air, blood on the face, you know, legend across the bottom. It's fantastic. And I just got my Teddy Roosevelt man in the arena with Trump's face on there, too. I am excited about all of my new T-Rex gear. So you too can get it. trexinc.com, Caucus 30. Don't sleep on this one. These guys are great folks that you want to get some merch from. You will greatly enjoy it. Oh, so let's see. So there was First of all, and I forgot to say it at the beginning. I'll have to come on and say this. You need to go to unauthorizedcaucus.com and make sure you're subscribed there. Most of you are. If you're not, though, whether you're a podcast listener or a live stream viewer, go to unauthorizedcaucus.com. Put in your email. You will stay updated. You'll get each episode plus the notes. The redacted email is crammed in there too. All of the links and resources of what we used to have these discussions will be on there. And of course, it also comes into your inbox. You get the notifications about when we're going to go live and when the podcast is up. You want to be there. You'll find all of our social links on X, Facebook, and the whole shebang at unauthorizedcaucus.com.
That's where the whole shebang is.
That's where the whole shebang is. And there was a shebang over last week's episode.
Yeah.
If you're following, of course, this is now run through Substack. You can comment using Substack. There was a big comment section that drew up over JD Vance. Legitimately so, because this is a big decision. Trump has been a controversial figure who he would pick as his second vice president because his first one turned out to be so controversial and terrible, quite plainly.
And
it was a big discussion.
To the country, yeah.
Well, yes, it was bad. It was very bad. So there's a lot of discussion surrounding that, and it opened up. We're not going to rehash the conversation, but it opened up a field of let's have that conversation about the figures that are being talked about, who they're connected to, what that means for the conservative movement. So this topic came in, and we'll spend a little bit of time on this and close out the show with this one. What's the 30-second view? Give me the elevator speech for what this topic entails.
Well, JD Vance got his career start from Peter Thiel, who is a billionaire angel investor, I think is the term used, venture capital aficionado, very rich, very powerful man. And ever since Vance was nominated, I started seeing a lot of things on social media, both in our comments and in person and just randomly on Twitter about like, Peter Thiel is this, Peter Thiel is that, yada, yada, yada. So, and I've kept up with Peter Thiel for a long time. You know, I've read one of his books. I've known about him for an extremely long time. I've read a lot of his writings. Well, I say a lot, not that many exist, but I was like, okay, people have blatant misconceptions, so let's look at this. And I made a Substack article about it that posted on Tuesday. So that will be in the show notes. You can go check that out for sure. And while you're there, leave a like and subscribe to my Substack as well as the Unauthorized Caucus Substack.
Shameless self-promotion.
Yep.
We dig it here.
I waited this long to plug my Substack until when it was legitimately relevant. What I did in this piece was I went through a lot of the objections to Peter Thiel and his influence, like why he might be a force for bad instead of a force for good, because I think he's a force for good in total. When you stack up all the chips against each other, I think he is a net positive. I think he's actually a pretty big net positive. But other people think otherwise. So I was looking at some of people's objections. I'm like, okay, let's see if there's any merit to these. And then I looked at some of his writings to see, okay, where is he ideologically aligned?
Well, there you go. So I think, pardon me, I got a tickle I can't get rid of today. I think this is indicative, and we can dive into Peter Thiel specifically, but I think this is indicative of a broader part of the conversation inside the Republican Party, inside the conservative movement right now. Because there are people rising to the top of leadership inside the conservative movement, people we all like and vote for, Donald Trump, people we're supporting, including Elon Musk and his purchase of Twitter. We do not entirely agree with these people. There are many things that used to be considered, if you're a social conservative, fundamental values of the Republican Party, the conservative movement, that they do not line up with. And yet we find ourselves in a position where a lot of these folks are our allies in certain battles. This one, I think, exemplifies that principle, that fork in the road that we're at, deciding do we run with these people or not? What does that mean? Is it an entire endorsement of them or not? That's a discussion worth having, and that one is bigger than Peter Thiel. That includes JD Vance. That includes Donald Trump. That includes folks like Elon Musk. That includes grassroots people we know, all the way down the list, who do not necessarily look like we do when it comes to the values that they hold, or their lifestyle, or the morals, or theological beliefs, even doctrinal stuff. And yet, there's the principle of the big tent side of the Republican Party, the right versus the left. Truly, everyone on the right and everyone on the left, because I still know people on the left who are liberal, but they're not crazy like the lefties, and they're becoming more and more okay with right side stuff because they realize there's no freedom to be found over here. These people are statists. They're authoritarians. I guess I'm actually with you. I'm just all the way at the middle toward the left of the right. So it's a very interesting thing to look at because that's not necessarily who I want making policy, but I'm very happy to have those people in electorally to put our people in. But I also hope that who we're electing is more toward my side than theirs. But welcome to the discussion to be had around the big tent side of the Republican Party.
Right. Yeah. Well, I would say that within the tent, Thiel is very far right. I would very much so. I mean, one of his writings from, I think, 2004 kind of seems like proto-Christian nationalism. He has this long essay that I think was originally a lecture that I think was actually compiled into, the lecture was compiled into an essay by Blake Masters, and it's called The Straussian Moment. And the conclusions of that is like, okay, well, I think his conclusion is that maybe the best thing is to have a Christian statesman at the helm to weather the storm, because we're in extremely complex and dangerous times, and history is fundamentally transforming. So we need somebody with strong Christian values to rely on truth to get us through this. And I can't dive super deep into that essay because it focuses a lot on the interplay between Strauss and Girard, neither of whom I am very familiar with, and they're both very philosophical anyway, this is not a good medium for philosophy.
But I mean, you want to repeat that line for us? So Peter Thiel is saying in this essay, who needs to be in charge?
A Christian statesman.
Now, when you say Peter Thiel is toward the right of the right, that kind of shocks a lot of people who might find out for the first time now that I'm saying it. Peter Thiel, the 56-year-old guy born in Frankfurt, Germany, is married to a man named Matt.
Yes.
And they have been married for several years. That doesn't sound like very far right to me, to a whole section of us that believe in traditional marriage as ordained by God, one man and one woman. This person's not my cup of tea. That is the traditional line.
Yeah.
And yet he says, who needs to be in charge?
A Christian state. Yeah, it's proto-Christian nationalism, which is...
Give us a definition of that.
Well, it's Christian nationalism 2 decades ago. I mean, it's like a pre-echo of kind of what we have today.
Well, I just did the proto part is what I'm looking for you to be. I understand what you're saying. So this is like, see, that's the thing. This is interesting because you say he's to the right, and I'm like, no, he's not, because he's a married man to a man. Like, this does not represent my conservative values all the way here on the right, where I'm pro-life, pro-traditional marriage, fill in the blank. I'm just about to name a bunch of social issues. And yet, when you start to look at the other side of the equation, the globalist, neocon, as we've called them for a long time, the neoconservatives, which really that's just synonymous with big business, chamber of commerce, globalist interest, people who've sold us out down the river, don't care about national sovereignty. If I look at that versus this national populism, the more protectionist side of things, the more sovereignty-based economic side of... I obviously, between those two choices on an economic scale, I'm going with the national populists. This is more of what I believe. But this definitely has some of the more, I guess, libertarian or used to be libertarian leanings in here, where the social issues don't line up with me, but the economics sure do. And yet both of these factions are kind of technically on the right because they're not the left, and yet this section of the neocons really are just in bed with big everything for themselves.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like I look at it and I go, you're not even really on the right. You're really leftists because you want in bed with whoever's in charge so that you can have a piece of the pie. Even if you're a useful idiot and you just think you're in charge, you're not. But this is all for you. This isn't a right-wing value at all. I would argue you're not right-wing. You're leftist.
Right.
But this is, here we go though. This is a weird paradox.
Yeah.
Being stuck in... You're telling me this guy's to the right of the right and he's a married man to a man?
Yes.
So, but he wants a Christian statesman at the helm.
Yes.
So, why the heck what in the world do I think about that, Mason?
Right. I mean, well, I don't like him for his sexual preferences, obviously, and I would obviously prefer that not be a part of his advocacy. But this is, I mean, that's what I was saying. There are plenty of objections to him. I just think the chips stack up better in the pro direction.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, just looking down.
Because his focus on the candidates he backs, and when he backs a candidate, he backs them heavily.
Oh, yeah.
He's not focusing on,
millions.
like, okay, what are the most pro-LGBTQ plus IA WXYZ candidates? Like, he's like, okay, who are the best on strong border control and anti-interventionism? And I'm like, those are some of my top issues, you know, if that's who he's mainly focusing on. Then I imagine that You know, I'm okay with that. You know, even though he makes personal choices I find detestable, I heavily disagree with, and even though he, you know, has done some political advocacy for gay rights stuff. I mean, I don't know what he would think about what the gay rights movement is today, you know, because it's certainly transformed over the 2 decades. Now we've got all this trans stuff. I have no idea what his position on that is. I can't. I if I had to guess, I would not say positive, but. You know,
well, let's not guess for other people. We have no idea.
Yeah,
but I mean,
exactly.
that's not. Well, this isn't the conversation of that. This is the conversation about what does exist. So, okay. So here's let me throw you another one. That's just, first of all, that's an interesting paradox that I think is more than just Peter Thiel. That is the conservative movement looking at who their allies are and aren't. And also, again, I'm going to go ahead and say I find a big difference in my mind in who I necessarily want in charge and who I will take when it comes to the electoral help and the banding together. That's where the big tent. Big tent republicanism, to me, is about the electoral politics of the matter. And then governance, now we're in my Christian nationalist mode. But I also recognize, and weirdly enough, some people, including Peter Thiel, and others, I've heard others, Mike Cernovich said this at an Eagle Council a long time ago. Mike Cernovich, who at that point, I haven't checked in with him in a while, was a professed atheist. His comment, which kind of blew people away, was, I want Christians in charge. I want Christians in charge. I know how civil society works. It works best when Judeo-Christian values are running the show. That's the world I want to live in.
Even Dawkins is
And
recognizing
also,
that now.
right, Dawkins is saying, I'm a cultural Christian.
Right.
Oh, heck, the big thing with Elon Musk this week, he had the huge interview with
He
Jordan
said a
Peterson.
very similar thing,
And he said, fine, I'm a cultural Christian too. And I look at it and I go, that's actually a really interesting way to put it, because you don't believe anything like what I do. They're not looking to be a churchgoer. They're not looking to come in line theologically with me. But on a cultural and political level, there is a recognition that Christian leadership or Christian statesmen or whatever, this is what is going to give me and everyone the most amount of freedom. It is going to bring cultural order. It is going to bring political order. It's going to bring economic order. This is the only place for order to be found and maximizing freedom. It's not going to be found in extremist fascist regimes, whether that's extremist socialists and the atheists that they are, or it's extremist Islam or extremist this or that. It's not going to be found there. It's when Christians are running the show. And that's kind of a weird statement that blows a bunch of us away, because the social conservative realm, we don't think of those people as wanting governance from the far social right. And yet that's actually what a lot of them admit, which is kind of wild to think about. It's definitely outside of it. That's more than just we align politically at election time, I'll take it, but now let me govern. And then he's, oh wait, you're saying, I want you guys to govern. Go. Right. We want a Christian statesman in charge. Right. Because you're actually going to give us more rights than anyone else. Right. And it's like, that's actually a very interesting thing I haven't thought about. This is where I think conservatives have a lot more thinking contextually to do and understand, because it's not as simple and black and white as I think a lot of political organizations have made. Those political organizations that have needed our donations to get going for a long time. They have a system. And the actual understanding of what's going on is transcendent to that system of needing donations and political cycle to cycle. It's anyway. It's very interesting. Okay, so let me ask you this question then. Peter Thiel, and this is one that I knew and was brought up in the comments section too, and I've seen it all over the other places as well. I've got two primary questions. Just like Elon Musk, and this is, I'm not saying you are the Peter Thiel apologist, but in this conversation you are. So you take all the blame for when he messes. No, I'm kidding. What about the transhumanism thing? He and Elon Musk both give me the same scary vibes about the melding together of humanity and technology moving forward in a way where I'm like, I'm out. I am out. Please stop putting microchips in people's brains. Steve Bannon, one of the big voices against transhumanism and this move forward to cheat death. I've seen a lot of stuff. Can you clarify for me, is that actually Peter Thiel? Is he really a techno modernist moving forward, or has that been attributed to him falsely, or is that actually in his writing? What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's not so much in his writing. I mean, I think some of his personal practices are do move in that direction, between wanting to see how chemical augmentation can boost the human body, because he's talked about using steroids, using Ozempic, saying that nicotine is something that boosts your IQ by 10 points and he should add that to his regimen. So it's I think in practice he's kind of a soft transhumanist, but I mean, this is also kind of a soft transhumanism in some ways, So maybe he's a little harder of a transhumanist than us, steroids and stuff, and getting around the actual hard work of things by using, because drugs are technology, that is technological means. But I haven't seen much that he's saying, okay, we should become half robot or something like that.
Well, and that you bring a good point. What is the sliding scale of transhumanism? What do you mean by that? You mean performance enhancing things like having a cup of coffee?
I mean,
or are you
compared
talking
to the
about
Mormons, Catholics are transhumanists.
Yeah, but yes, there's a scale there, which actually I think that we so often hear Steve Bannon rail against transhumanism, correctly so, but he's railing against one side of transhumanism, and you got to ask, well, what do you mean by that?
Right.
Are you talking about the cheating of death, taking into our own hands by robotic or chemical means the ability to cheat death and become God? Which I think the occult left is inarguably in that camp. Or are you just talking about, you're talking about popping a cup of coffee every once in a while or a 5-hour energy and boosting your performance? Because both of these things could be considered. That's actually that's an interesting point I hadn't thought about.
Right. I mean, like,
scale.
There's the question of technological augmentations to the human body, but like, do you really even go anywhere without your phone? Like, it's not physically attached to you, but it's mentally attached to you, and your mind is just as much part of yourself as your body is. So if you can't, like, I would say there's very little difference between being mentally attached to your phone and being physically attached to your phone. Like, if it was, like, literally grafted onto you.
No, you're not. I mean, you're not. I'm not going to disagree with you on that one, because I mean, you build your habits. It's neurological wires and pathways.
Exactly.
You're doing it, you're doing it one way or another. That's actually a very interesting point. So then here, let me hit you with one of my last biggies, because I think this is, again, we are starting the conversation.
I wonder if this is the biggie I think it is.
Maybe.
I'm wondering, because if it's not,
well, now
I have another biggie.
Now I just want to let this hang. Oh, we have another biggie?
Well,
you have to bring up the self biggie.
If this is not the
Don't
biggie,
say it!
Well, you go.
Oh, fine. I'm just going to let this hang. There is a pregnant pause in the room. Let it hang, man. Just give it a sec. No. I forgot where I was going to go with this, except the big point at the end. Oh, that's what I was going to say. Just remember here, by the way, everyone who's listening, our tagline on Unauthorized Caucus, start the conversation. We're not giving you our answer, we're giving you our answers. We're giving you our thoughts. We're not giving answers to these things. We are asking questions. So don't come at me, bro. This isn't us giving the lowdown answers. This is us having these conversations that we all ought to be having in earnest. So, I mean, we would love and welcome, just like we go back and forth, which it's usually a little bit more amicable on camera than off. Sometimes off, we don't actually fight ever. But, like, this is about starting those conversations. That's what this platform is. So we're asking questions, we're giving some thoughts and answers back, but it is not the answer. I don't think at any point in some of these dicey things we are telling you this is just how it is.
Yeah.
We're offering thoughts and we're moving through this ourselves. So in light of that, why, sir, do you support someone who is on the board of the Bilderbergers?
Yes, this is the biggie I thought it was.
But seriously,
it is a very good question.
For anyone in the Phyllis Schlafly world, if those of us who are not with us, which apparently that's someone called that into question for me. I worked with Phyllis Schlafly personally under her tutelage for years. I am quite acquainted with all of her writings and all of the decades of political work that she did before I was even alive or my parents were married or frankly even born, because she started in politics before both of my parents were born. Yet, I am aware of what she did. And I have read all of her books. I have helped her edit some of her books. If you have read A Choice Not an Echo, the Bilderbergers are one of the...
Which, reminder, a couple months ago, we did a whole show about A Choice Not an Echo.
Right.
For the 40th anniversary, right?
That's right, yeah.
Because
60th anniversary. Which was this year, the 60th anniversary, and also the 100th anniversary of Phyllis Schlafly's birth this year, which is one of the big reasons. There's your little plug. Eagle Council is coming up next month. Go to eaglecouncil.com. I'll say it again at the end, but we've got tickets open. It's going to be at Bedminster, New Jersey, at the Trump National Golf Club. Beautiful event. We're going to celebrate Phyllis Schlafly. We're going to be talking a lot about January 6th, justice system, due process, probably the most pressing part of the administrative states pushing down on us. But
A Choice Not an Echo.
A Choice Not an Echo. I know, I remembered. I'm not that old. Goodness. A Choice Not an Echo. She fought the kingmakers in each of those chapters, the people who tried to kingmake inside the Republican Party rather than letting grassroots Republicans have their say. The Bilderbergers were one key figure. Now, let's be fair. The Bilderbergers are not the big baddies of the world. There are far bigger, far baddier, far more unknown players. But as far as all of this web of connected organizations, the Bilderbergers are definitely in there as one of the top shadowy groups in America who meets and doesn't let anything happen, this and that and the other. In the world, I'm sorry. But in our American political system is what we're talking about. That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Like, they're power players that are not for the grassroots, we the people kind of power. They are for they, the powerful, the elites, the kingmakers. Now, this enters a conversation about all the people who are supposedly conservative and who've gone to the World Economic Forum to speak upon invitation. We call that into question. Well, are you really a believer, or are you there to potentially have a say-so? There's a lot of interesting stuff. However, Peter Thiel sits on the board, on the steering committee, if I'm not mistaken, of the Bilderbergers, the big secret group that Phyllis spoke so nastily of. That, to me, is a giant red flag no-no for just about anyone. I hear that you're in the Bilderbergers, I immediately say, nah, I'm out.
Yeah.
So, what's up with that?
Yeah. Well, I
mean, is there? I'm not asking you to defend him as if it's you, but I mean, what do you have any insight on that?
Well, I think we should. Insight into the Bilderberg group and like what each individual member thinks about it. No, like we can't get that.
Well, this sounds like an excuse.
No. Well, here are a couple of facts. Phyllis wrote A Choice Not an Echo, identifying the kingmakers as a negative force. Phyllis was early to endorse Donald J. Trump as he was a choice, not an echo. Peter Thiel, who is on the Bilderberg group and she fits in the kingmaker category by association with them, donated over $1 million to Donald Trump and was on his presidential transition team. So I think if we are considering those facts, I think that one of the only reasonable conclusions is that there has to be some nuance in the situation, because
you're telling me everything's not black and white in politics?
No, not everything's black and white in politics. Now, like, why Peter Thiel is on the Bilderberg group, what he does there, I don't know, but nobody else knows. In general, I mean, the people that go to the Bilderberg group are very globalist-oriented people, but and this is something I talk about in my article. It's like, okay, like he's associated with all these globalist-oriented people. He goes to the secret meeting with a bunch of globalists, and then he turns around and donates millions of dollars to close borders and to stop endless wars. So it's like, okay, like guilt by association versus like where he's actually putting his money. You know, I think where he's putting his money and like who he's backing shows more to me about where his allegiances lie than the fact that he's on the steering committee of that group. I mean, like, if I was invited to the Bilderberg group meeting, I would say yes right away. Would you not?
No, I would totally say yes.
Exactly.
I want to go. I want to find out what's going on.
Yeah, exactly.
See,
and then if you have billions of dollars and are in a position and have enough leverage to get into a position of influence in the Bilderberg group, would you not do it? I certainly would.
I don't disagree with you at all.
Now,
which is
because
why I would tend to agree with the nuance argument. Because again, Donald Trump Donald Trump is about to run and beat the tar out of Kamala Harris. Yet I've seen all the pictures of the check that he sent her for her attorney general campaign back in 2011 or 2012, whatever year it was.
Yeah.
And you look at it and realize, yeah, that's right. I mean, Trump was in a certain world and played the game and had his influence, but the game has changed. The world has changed. Trump's opinions have changed, obviously. And we all support and vote for Donald Trump. So why does that not give me leeway to have nuance for other people as well? To me, again, I have to tend to say I agree with you. It's like, well, he may sit on the on the board of an organization that has all of these views traditionally that I don't agree with, but what he has said and done and put his money where his mouth is sure doesn't line up with that. So I'm at least going to maintain an open mind about that. I'm not sure, but I'm going to maintain an open mind.
Because, like, because it's so hard for me to say that is a decisive negative, because so much runs against it being a decisive negative. And if you look at his ideological basis, it's not like neoliberal globalism. It is the complete polar opposite of neoliberal globalism. He's a neo-reactionary. He's one of like the big four of the neo-reactionary movement, which until like 2 weeks ago was more of a taboo thing, but now it's like, okay, JD Vance has the founder of the neo-reactionary movement's phone number on his phone, so okay, we can talk about this now. So it's he's which is why I say he's so far right, because that is I mean, I hate to use the term far right. It's just like a right-wing movement. It is, and it is like the middle of the road if you're talking world history.
Yeah. Well, and the reality is all of this. By the way, I actually agree with that argument. To me, that's a giant red flag. However, it's very the Bilderberger group is very contradictory with a lot of where Peter Thiel has put his money, and massive amounts of money at that.
Right.
So it kind of makes me at least pause and say, "Now hold on, let me watch this for a little bit." I don't know. I would normally have told you Bilderberger bad, outdone. However, I don't change my mind about the Bilderberger group. But at least this doesn't line up with what I know about the Bilderberger group. So let me at least watch the situation and see.
Exactly. Yeah.
And also to your point, he was in line with Phyllis Schlafly, and Phyllis Schlafly was no Bilderberger. She was the primary voice calling them out to begin with. She outed them very beginning of the whole thing in the 1960s, because they're 1954, 6, 7 that it was founded. It was somewhere in the 1950s. I forget the year that group was founded, I believe. 1964. She's been sneaking around into their meetings and she described it all at different things, and then publishing the who's who of it. Yeah. For her to line up with someone who's on that board in her choice of Donald Trump, to me at least said, I'm going to watch this one for a minute before I pass judgment, because something is not as black and white here as I would have liked to maybe assume. So yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, and I think that this is something that I think is important to mention, which is one of Peter Thiel's main goals in his outlook on, the way the world should work is very similar to Elon Musk. He wants to see like actual technological progress. He doesn't just want to see like, oh, computers keep getting smaller and faster and like we keep optimizing software. Like, no, he wants to see us like figure out how to build cities on the ocean and like colonize Mars. So it's a lot of what he's doing is oriented towards that. So if that means like supporting people who are going to take a hammer to the system that's focused all our energy on, wokeness and DEI, or if that's going to be, going to the meeting with the people who make decisions for the entire Western economy, like if I take him at his word on that, because that's where his actions line up on that. So another thing is he was going after DEI 3 decades ago.
Yeah, the diversity myth.
Yeah.
Wasn't that his book, 1995?
Yeah.
That was a little ahead of its time.
Right.
Well, I mean, we've been talking about this issue, but even for where we are now, that's
right. I mean, how old were you when that came out? I wasn't even born yet. So
you weren't even an apple in your mom and dad's eye.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I don't think my mom and dad even knew each other.
I was born. I remember 1995. It was a good year. Toy Story came out. Anyway.
Wait, did my mom and dad know? No.
Did your mom and dad know each other in 1995?
I'm not sure.
You youngin'. Anyway, I'm just kidding. No offense to the Mason Mohan fan club. You are lovely people. I'm just joshing him. But yeah, it's 1995. This is a good bit before the now hated DEI, side of the woke ideology. So, no, I think there's, and we'll wrap it up because of our short episode here. We're 3 minutes shy of an hour here, right on par with normal. But I remember when this program we used to go for 30 minutes. I don't know how we used to fit these discussions in 30 minutes. Yeah. How did we used to do that? There's too much to talk about. I think that this is very indicative to me, and I saw someone put it really well last week as we were watching the RNC play out. There were some very, very conservative Christian voices saying, hey, everybody, as the RNC looks a whole lot different, and we have very not social conservative voices speaking and saying, the left has lied to us. I am over here voting for Donald Trump and all of these Bible-thumping people who have more respect for my dignity and care about me more than you do. I was used and lied to over here. And you also lied to me about who they are. I don't agree with them, but they're lovely people. Watching that play out was very interesting to me. And then I saw someone put it down really well. I think it was William Wolf, who's the Center for Baptist Leadership. He's one of the conservative wings of the Southern Baptist Convention. I think I've got those names correctly. I'm repeating it quickly because I'm not a big follower of his. I just saw it. And he put it well. He said, let's remind ourselves there are these 3 big factions politically of the last several decades inside the Republican Party. There's the neocon Chamber of Commerce faction. There's the national populist / protectionist faction. And there's the social conservative faction. For a long time, social conservatives, of which I am one, said, we have hooked our wagon to these neocons who have made overtures to us and just failed us at every opportunity. And they have destroyed the nation as a result of it. With open borders, with free trade, with this. Just go down the list of all of the terrible things. And now, in the Trump era, we have shifted over. We were never driving the bus. They were, and they made overtures, and we said, fine, we'll come along with it. And we gave them our votes. And now the leadership of the party has shifted over to this national populism under Trump and now Vance, and it does not look like what we would normally expect it to look like. In fact, it comes with a much less, we're going to make overtures of being Christian just like you, and of having all these social... They don't give a care about giving any of those overtures. And yet, we have more of a fertile ground for sowing the seeds of liberty and of our Christian values inside an America run with those standards. And we have a way bigger seat at the table with those folks politically. The Trump administration listened to so many of the conservative Christian right during his first term. Was everything perfect? No. But did I get a heck of a lot more out of him than I got out of George W. Bush in 8 years, who claimed to be far more of a Bible-believing Christian than Trump does?
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
100% yes. And that's not to say nothing good happened for religious liberty and everything else under Bush, but a lot better happened under Trump. And that, to me, is a very interesting way to look at those three groups and say, hey, folks, maybe it's time for us to realize a shift to this leadership in the party, the national populace getting in the driver's seat, isn't necessarily a bad thing. We still have a bigger seat at the table than we had before. We were just being led along and not really given any kind of voice before. I can't disagree with that assessment. It's a very interesting assessment. And then when you back up and look at the Republican Party as a whole, in light of that, you kind of see that, well, maybe here we are at big tent electoral. But then, to your point, there's a lot of people inside that big tent that don't agree with us that actually want Christian statesmen to be leading. Now, I don't think Amber Rose, who is one of the big contentious RNC speakers, I don't think she quite wants Christian statesmen leading, but she is one of those beginning voices that says, wait a minute, you all are lying to me. The narrative machine is a bunch of liars. And I was sold a bill of goods about Trump and the MAGA supporters, and it is not like that over here at all. And I go, yes, you're very confused about some other stuff, and we'll work on that, but I will take your voice. Because, yes, everyone on that side has been lied to and indoctrinated from K all the way up. So we have work to do, and if we're not going to accept the people who take the first right step, where else are we going to start? We're never going to grow. And we're never going to bring them over to more fully understanding our side. That's looking at it in this way. This is where I have space for the Peter Thiels of the world, for the Trumps, for the JD Vances. I have space for that because I recognize the nuance of what we're in. And it's not just us in charge. We are not a majority. We being the conservative Christian, the Christian nationalist, the whatever you want to call it. We're not the majority. But there's a lot more people I think are on our side than we realize.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting conversation to have. And I know a lot of people are going to disagree with me on that one probably, but I really think it's time for the conservative Christian realm, Christian nationalists, whatever you want to call yourselves. I adopt the latter phrase now. I'm a Christian nationalist. Bring it on. I'm okay with this. This is a good thing. And I'll argue that one now. But I think that it's time for all of us on that side of the spectrum to have some more space for the discussion about a few things that don't look like it has in America the last 40 years for Republican electoral politics. And I think Peter Thiel is a big part of that.
Yeah.
So I tend to agree with you, even though I still have reservations.
Yeah.
I have reservations about JD Vance.
Yeah.
I have reservations about all kinds of people.
Well, I mean, you're right.
I have reservations about people who have reservations about JD Vance. I have reservations about everyone.
I mean, I have reservations about Trump. I back
Oh,
him
yeah, I
100%.
have reservations about Trump, too.
But, like, unless you are running, you're not going to have a candidate that you agree with 100% of the time on all the issues. And, like, the average person is so flip-floppy on all their beliefs anyway that, like, you as a candidate in 2 years, you probably wouldn't vote for now.
Yeah. It's interesting. Well, there you go. There's the big conversation. And a lot of other stuff before that, and then we'll see. We'll talk, when this broadcasts, we will talk about what happened on Wednesday night with Biden, if anything big happens. We obviously have a lot of stuff we'll talk about with the DNC coming up. We've talked about a lot of stuff. Go to, there we go.
Unauthorizedcaucus.com.
Go to it's across the bottom of the screen here. Unauthorizedcaucus.com. You see it down there. Go there. Find us on the socials. You can follow us there. Sign up. Make sure your email is subscribed. Subscribe to the Rumble channel. Subscribe to the YouTube channel if that's your preference, although we don't like YouTube and they don't like us and they're probably going to can us sooner than later. Make sure all of those things happen. But in particular, go to eaglecouncil.com. You can see a list of speakers there. Not all of the speakers have been announced, but a good bit of them have. It's going to be a great lineup. August 14th and 15th out at Bedminster, New Jersey at the Trump National Club. Tickets are on sale. They are not sold out. You can still get space, but it will be sold out at a certain point because our space is limited. It will go. I'm positive of that at this point. So get them now if you'd like to come. There's also a hotel arrangement on there and everything. We've made hotel room blocks, so you'll find it all at eaglecouncil.com. You can come and join us. If you're one of the people waiting on a pending email from me, don't worry, I haven't forgotten. I'm going to get back to you. We've just had a lot of different pieces trying to put together. And then I'm trying to think if there's anything else. I think that's it. Oh, you've seen it across the bottom. Our wonderful sponsor, TREXinc.com. Go on over to T-Rex Inc. Caucus 30.
Caucus 30.
Big discount. We don't always have the shirts. We do have the shirts on a lot now, but not at work usually, which is we're sitting in an office, so we don't have a T-shirt on. But we love T-Rex Inc. Caucus 30 gets you a big old discount. Go on over there to TREXinc.com and say thank you while you're there. But I think that's it. We'll do it again next week, Thursday.
It's caucus time.
It's caucus time. Have a good week, everybody.